see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
Hi, it's Edwin Rutsch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and this is part of our year-long conference on how we can go about building a culture of empathy and compassion. And this is panel 12A, and I'll pass it on to our moderator, Daniel Basil.
Well, thank you for hosting. It's really a pleasure to talk to you again. You and I connected about a month or so ago in a discussion on Social Edge, and through that we did an interview, and that's one of our guests today is Bert Ola Bergstrand. I first met Bert through Facebook. We were introduced by a couple of different people about 6 or 8 months ago, and we've been building our relationship over that time. And so after you and I talked, I thought that Bert would be a good one to try to bring in on the panels with us. We may be joined by another person called Bill Huddleston later today. He may be having some technical difficulty right now. That's one of the challenges when we do one of these things. Mm-hmm. But you know, Bert is the founder and chairman of the Social Capital Forum. It's an action and learning platform for developing social capital around the world. Social Capital Forum has also been instrumental in bringing the impact investment field into Nordic countries and hosting this year's Social Capital Forum. So, Bert, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks.
Now, we have a series of questions that that Edwin has developed, and I'm going to try to go through those. And when you and I started chatting before the conversation started today, you mentioned that the next event you're hosting is going to be focusing on children and youth. And you talked about how in your part of the world, a large percentage of kids are not employed or underemployed, and that's true. I just read a report from New York City about the dismal quality of public schools. So while there's plenty of people giving research that says there's a problem, is there, what we can talk about today is there enough people who have the empathy needed to get them more personally involved to where they begin to be using their time and their talent and their dollars to help support connections with young people?
Yeah, so, I think, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm living in a neighborhood that's called, the city is Gothenburg in south west Sweden. It's a city of 500,000 people. It's the second largest city in Sweden. Sweden is maybe, or if you are familiar, one of 4 countries in the Nordic countries. We have Finland to the east, we have Norway to the west, and Denmark to the south. And I would say the culture is, and the discussions are pretty much the same. In regards to youth unemployment, we have around 25% here in Sweden. From how you count today. And in the area I live, it's called Bergsjön. It's 91% immigrants. That meaning that you have one parent coming from or is born in another country. So it's a large issue, especially about youth, but also if you are from another country, that how you could be integrated in the society. And there, I think maybe it's the institutions rather than empathy that is making it very difficult to get into society. We have many rules and many hinders that make you take the last step. But to break up the institutions, empathy is vital. And my field, which is really building social capital and investment in people, empathy is the crucial factor for really growing the communities. So for me, it's evident a crucial part for motivation and building a compassionate society. and also maybe then to break up the institutions in some way that has been founded for 150 years. So it's not easy, but if you can start to look at the people, see the resources within, then empathy is a way to go to really build up sustainable relationships over in the future. So for me, it's evident, and it was really great to have the opportunity to be part of this discussion, I feel.
You know, Edward has been organizing this discussion. I've browsed through some of the different videos that are already interviews that you've done, and I think people use the word empathy, but people have different meanings and understandings, and I think Edward's trying to bring that out. So if you had a metaphor for empathy, like I've always used the one, Gandhi talked about volunteering as a way to begin to walk in somebody else's shoes to the point where you can begin to understand their problems and empathize with them, and then that would lead you to greater personal involvement in trying to help them. If you had
so it's a difficult question. It's a feeling for me. It's a deep feeling. It's I would maybe like a heart. It's a complex metaphor, but it's a really deep located feeling. It's not about rationality and logic. It's about deeper feeling than I could more express how it feels. Empathy. It's a deeply rooted feeling that you have, and it's there for a long time. But like a heart, I would say it's like a heart. Maybe that's a good metaphor for it. But
how would you describe the feeling? You were saying it's like a feeling. How do you describe it?
It's deep in the body. When you feel it, you really feel it.
So it's a deeply felt feeling, really down deep in the body. Then
yeah, it's in the stomach. It's definitely not in the head. If I take the difference, if you think logically or like you don't, you're like emotionally distanced in some way. But empathy is a much deeper and much. When I look back on some occasions when I grew up, I can relate to a few moments that I can still feel today in how it was in that movement. So it's very strong, something strong.
Excuse me just a moment, Edward. I have Bill on Skype in another format. How can I get him into this?
Oh, if you hang up, I can pull him into this call.
So I should hang up?
Yeah, hang up on him, and then...
I did that, and he's under Bill Huddleston.
Okay, let's see. Oh, there he is.
All right.
Yay, here we come. Here he is.
Okay, good. Sorry for the technical delay there.
Well, we've just gone through some introductions. The other two people in the conversation, you talked to Edwin, I think, by telephone this week, and Bert-Olof Bergstrand is from Sweden, and he leads an organization that focuses on bringing people together for it's called the Social Capital Forum. Bill is have been working with nonprofits for many years, and he focuses on workplace fundraising campaigns and strategies, trying to help nonprofits understand how they can better attract funding from corporations by way of payroll deduction campaigns that take place every year. And Bill and I have been connected for several years in different ways, and through that process, he's begun to empathize a little bit with what I'm trying to do, and has reached out and introduced me to other people who might help do this. So, Bill, I want to thank you for joining the conversation. You want to add on a little bit to that introduction, and then we'll go back into the questions.
Sure, be glad to, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the conversation. I'm looking forward to it. Here's the thumbnail sketch of my background and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I grew up basically right outside the D.C. area in Arlington, and still live in Fairfax, Virginia. I was a federal public servant for more than 25 years, and in that time became very familiar with the Combined Federal Campaign, which is the federal government's workplace giving program, and it is the largest workplace giving program in the world. One of the unique things about workplace giving is that it's the only type of nonprofit fundraising that is subsidized, low risk, and high leverage. And another really important part about it is the fact that the funds generated through workplace giving are unrestricted. And when I talk with the various, nonprofit leaders, and I'll ask them the question, well, what's the value of an unrestricted dollar? And the answer is usually 3 times as valuable as a restricted dollar. So that's, I think that's an important part of it. I've been involved with, as Dan mentioned, I've been involved with nonprofits literally, since I was 5. My earliest memory of something outside of family or church is being with my dad at YMCA Indian Guides meeting, and then my dad, who was an Eagle Scout, and then my brother and I were Eagle Scouts, and my sons are now 7th grade and 6th grade, and we're very involved with scouting as well. So that's one of the areas where I think we just grew up learning about service to others. My dad happened to be a social worker. While I was in most of my federal career, I have experience on the Hill as well as in several different administrative agencies, executive branch agencies. Most of my federal time was at the Securities and Exchange Commission. And that's also the time that I decided to get a master's degree, and I chose to get a master's in nonprofit management. I was a computer guy in my federal career, and I could have stayed in the IT world, but after learning 20 operating systems, I really wasn't interested in learning the 25th one. And I'd always had, and so what I did find though is as I was doing my master's work in nonprofits, and at the time my children were real young, and I didn't want a master's degree and a divorce, so I did this at the one semester, one course a semester pace. So but one of the things that I found was that the nonprofit world really didn't know much about the CFC, and the CFC organizers weren't always the best ways to get the word out to the to the nonprofits, and so one of the things that I do now is show nonprofits how to get benefit, use the CFC obviously for fundraising, but also there's other benefits that accrue because of the kind of unique nature of workplace giving. And one of the ways I'll sometimes describe it is it's like the duck-billed platypus of fundraising. Everything you think you know about fundraising is a little bit different when it comes to workplace giving. One thing in particular is the nonprofits themselves are not doing the direct solicitation. That's done by the federal employees. But so let me stop there with that brief background about myself, and we'll continue with the conversation.
Well, thank you, and this will be interesting because Bert, where you are in Europe, the different forms of funding of social endeavors, of education initiatives, is that correct? I mean, do you have workplace fundraising, raising money for NGOs in Sweden?
Not directly. Maybe they're not big, at least. It's more that you can find different funding from the state or from foundations. Here, the basic model in Scandinavia is that you pay tax and the state delivers the tax through municipalities, so you get it back. And the part of that, you can get some funding if you run a civil organization from the municipality. So that's the normal way of funding civil organizations. To some extent, maybe also some companies can sponsor civil organizations and so, but we don't have that many financing alternatives, I would say.
So we're talking about empathy, and Bill, I just started with a question about asking what your metaphor would be for empathy, and when Edward asked me to tell what mine was, I said it's the story about Gandhi and walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, so you better understand the problem. And he said, well, you can't use that one. You got to figure another one. Have you thought about this? What would be your metaphor for empathy?
Well, I didn't know about the rule that I couldn't use the walk a mile in another person's shoes, because that's also one of my traditional ones as well. You know, and I think one reason that Gandhi's example sticks so well is because it is a good example of it. You know, I also think, you know, I know one of the questions is also, does empathy drive action or actions drive empathy? And I really do think that that's kind of a yin and a yang question, because I think that, you know, as I mentioned, both in addition with my sons as well as with other youth organizations that I've worked with, I think at the younger level, it's really important to have the action. And by having the action, you then develop the empathy. But like, you know, you can teach a 5-year-old to, hey, we're going to go down to the stream for Earth Day, and if there's a plastic bottle in the stream, we collect them and we put those in a trash bag, because that's not good for anyone. If you ask a 5-year-old, do they have empathy, they probably don't even know what the word is. But by developing the actions over time, they will become an empathetic person.
Well, and so Edward asked a follow-up question on that, and what would be the opposite of empathy? And when I answered that, I had just listened to some lecture at Harvard where he talked about sympathy. When you talked about do nonprofits value the general operating dollar? Absolutely. And there's a bigger problem underneath that, and that is that consistent funding from philanthropic sources to solve long-term problems is very difficult to achieve. So I use the word sympathy, and I talked about random acts of kindness. If we can't generate consistent support for endeavors on an ongoing basis and flexible operating support, then those endeavors aren't going to have the resources to really build the quality organization and achieve the results we all want. So, Bert, what would be your opposite of empathy? How would you frame that?
It's not either you have empathy or you don't have it in some way. So that's the opposite. Of course, you can nurture empathy, but it's more. I would say if you don't have the empathy, you are, like I see the world today. It's we have built up the institutions that we have based on university and rationality and logic, and we have lost the empathic qualities in society that is there, but we don't use it, and that's related to meaning, and it's that is what drives motivation in society and all kinds of sustainability issues, if it's a company or if it's ice hockey you're playing, or if you go to make some studies or so. The meaning aspect is the key for developing of the society, and I think we are going in this direction right now. It's really evolving from almost by day, I would say. But so the either you have empathy or the other side is a black hole, I would say. Maybe that a black hole would be if you don't have it. A black
What
hole,
about you,
maybe.
Bill? How would you answer that?
Well, for me, the opposite is I think it's epitomized by every now and then you'll see, and luckily you don't see these quite as many times as you used to, but the bumper sticker that says, "The one with the most toys wins." I mean, to me, that's the perfect example of the epitome of selfishness, and not being empathetic about anyone at any level.
Edwin sent me a Forbes article that was an interview with Bill Drayton, and talked about empathy-based ethics, a strategic essential. And a couple of the quotes, he said that no business can succeed unless everyone is a change maker in that business. And he went on to say, to deny any human the ability to be fully contributing part of society is the ultimate cruelty. Your example of the young person going out and picking up cans along the riverbank begins to build an interest in that issue. I think that as people grow up, they haven't learned that problem solving takes a lot of people working together around the problem for a long time, and that in our social sector, we have the nonprofit who is trying to solve a problem. They're trying to find ideas to solve the problem. They're trying to find people to help them solve the problem, and they're trying to find dollars to solve the problem. And the burden is all on them. How do we educate more people who are affected by the problem than just the clients to begin to be through an empathetic path, that they become more proactive in the workplace giving, for instance? There could be an awful lot of people doing things to encourage other people to support certain nonprofits if they took on that role themselves. How do you guys see that?
Daniel, could I just interject here? I just want to share my metaphor as well, just so we have all the metaphors on the table here. And then we can kind of move on to that. For me, my metaphor of empathy is that empathy is like the cornucopia. And, being from Sweden, I think the cornucopia is a Norse, symbol, kind of the horn of plenty, where all kind of good, fruits and vegetables and all kinds of good things come out of. So for me, it's like that as we empathize with each other, we get to share each other's feelings, which is kind of that horn of plenty. And the opposite is a desert. So it's a desert, which is like the Sahara Desert, the total monotone, lonely, disconnected space where there's just no variety of experience and richness. So I just wanted to set that up there, because I think the question is kind of like, how do we go from a desert to, a cornucopia? How do we go from a hole to, a big black hole to a deep, heartfelt, feeling? How do we go from a pile of toys to, walking in someone else's shoes? So it sounds like your question, Daniel, is kind of like, how do we get people to kind of make that switch?
Well, and I'm glad you jumped in onto the conversation, because and Bill and Bert, chime in yourself if you want to ask each other questions off of this, so it's not just a one way. But I think there's four of us on the screen here. What would it take that a year from now there were 40 of us talking to each other, or a few years from now there were 400 of us, or a few years after that there were 4 million of us? The actions that some people take over time that would increase the number of people around a particular idea. What what strategies? What would Bert, Bill, Edwin? What would you be doing to try to build a increase the number of people who not only might be empathetic in general into cornucopia, but might focus on particular issues, whether they be the environment or they be youth issues or health issues. How do you not only build a broad-based group of people, but then focus them on particular social issues that need a continuous focus?
Well, I do have an idea on that one. And one of the questions was, what are the obstacles to deepening empathy? And my short answer to that one is, I think people in groups that focus on divisions and being divisive. Now, to flip that around in terms of how to overcome that obstacle, and Dan, this goes exactly to the point you just raised, is that I think the only way this can happen is one thing at a time. It might be 2 or 3 groups working on 2 or 3 different things, but my idea on this one is to focus on a single idea that everyone can agree on. Doesn't matter if they're liberal, conservative, moderate, white, black, Latino, LBGT, etc., all of it. And there's certainly many that you could pick. You could say everyone should, not be hungry. You could say everyone should have, clean water. But the one that I think would resonate the most with the American public, and it's one that regardless of where you are on any spectrum, people would agree with, is to focus on literacy. It doesn't matter, if you're 6 or 60, if you can't read, it's worse for our society and the entire world than if you can read. And so the only thing I think this works is not at the incremental level. It works with a, quote, BHAG goal, which is I'm not sure if it's a worldwide acronym. In the United States, it's an acronym that stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. So a BHAG goal. And so, for example, if literacy is the topic area, 100% literacy by 2020. In the United States of America, we want 100% literacy by 2020. That can become the BHAG goal. And that's a national goal that I really do believe that all nonprofits, governments, schools, churches, can all support. And even though it's a big goal, it is achievable. Everyone can learn to read. Everyone who has the mental capacity can learn to read. There's no one who is, not trying to be insulting here, but none of us are going to be in the Olympics this summer. But all of us, learn how to read, and all of us get value from reading. And one author that I like is Noah St. John. He has a couple different books, and to paraphrase one of his points is, if you want better answers, ask better questions. And so in the realm of literacy, I think some thought-provoking questions that could be asked is, who taught you to read? And so that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, and especially, kind of given the emphasis that, so much the world has on be like a business and be more business-like, etc. Well, question number 2 is, how much did you pay them? And the answer is almost always going to be 0. You didn't pay anyone to teach you to read. Someone taught you. It might have been a parent, could be grandparents, even if it was your teacher who, presumably had a salary. You, as the recipient of that value, learning to read, didn't pull out your change purse and pay that person. Okay, and so then question number 3 is, we're doing this kind of stair step leading up, isn't it time you paid them back? And then the 4th question then becomes, the 4th one's not a question, it's here's how you can volunteer to help solve literacy in the east side of Chicago, or in Arlington, Virginia, or in Buchanan County, Virginia, which is the coal mining county, coal mining area. And this goes to the point Dan's made in some of his other articles, is that
information at the horizontal networks can be interesting and you can learn some things, but you don't really solve anything unless you actually get to the vertical side and you narrow down. And it's like, okay, how can you help somebody in Falls Church who, you know, maybe English is a second language, learn English, learn how to read. I mean, and be honest, they may not know how to read in any language, you know. So, but learning how to read and is something that, you know, no conservative is going to say it's a bad thing for someone to learn how to read. No liberal is going to say it's a bad thing for someone to learn how to read. You can pick other social issues, and they're going to say, "Oh, no, well, they shouldn't do this because of that, or you know, or you know, because X or Y." You know, and the other, you know, kind of point about it being at the very local level. I always remember this example from my marketing textbook, and I don't know if Dan was the one that helped write this or not, but basically there's, and this was the true example, but you know, there were 3 pizza joints in Chicago, and these are the slogans on the 3 different stores. First one said, "Best pizza in the world." Second one said, "Best pizza in Chicago." And the third one says, "Best pizza on the block." And guess which one was the busiest? You know, the one where there's a local specific benefit, the one where it's on the block. And my point is that by, if we set those questions up, then have to have the local way that someone can help actually do something with literacy as a national goal.
How would that work for you in Sweden? What would be your thoughts on this, Bert?
Well, reading is definitely, I agree 100%. No one would question that activity. However, I wouldn't say everyone, but the school system at least gave a relatively fair support to learn reading in Scandinavia, I think, as a whole. So we speak a lot about we should have a better education and so, but reading in general, I would say most people have that opportunity to learn from. But I think there are, when you speak about empathy and building a resilient society or an abundant society, I think it's to build up structures that support reciprocity, to support sharing, to support people. And it's about leadership. It's about people, to find people who want to do something good, and they could be key actors in society, and to build up structures from school. When you meet up in the morning, I saw a school in Tel Aviv in Israel just the other day at Presenter Group, by the way, where they started the morning to sit in a circle and say, what did you do yesterday and how do you feel? And that had immensely good effect on not just the school, but it had spread all over the town. And when you start to connect in that way, you build community in total. You start to learn to listen to the other person. We have in the school system a teacher standing and telling the children what to do or what they should learn. And here you learn to ask the questions that we heard just now. And so to ask questions and to listen to the other people and to start, for example, in school would be a brilliant way to start to develop social capital and a sharing and a giving environment. And also, of course, with the possibilities we have now with social media and technology to connect up around the world and to learn more from each other and really go beyond all these silos that we have everywhere. And this is an ongoing process right now to connect up people, and I think you are doing it, and there are hundreds of organizations out there that are committed to connect with people, and that will bring a better understanding, and you can start to listen and see what other people are doing. Great diversity around. So we can definitely nurture empathy if we ask questions and use some nice methods around it.
do you, for all three of you, do you think that in the different conversations you're part of, whether it be face to face or on the internet, are there people sitting there scratching their head like this and saying, "Gosh, I've got to increase the number of empathetic people"? Are people actually intentionally thinking of that as a glue for how we stickiness for how we get people involved with whatever it is we're hoping to build involvement with?
Well, I'm pretty, closely integrated into the network of people who are doing that. So I see a movement building for that. There's you mentioned Bill Drayton through Ashoka, and he's promoting, empathy in the schools. So they have their network of 3,000 fellows, and they're they're creating, a website, Facebook page, doing speeches, doing community organizing around making empathy like a part of the curriculum. So it's like, reading, writing, arithmetic, empathy is kind of like part of it. So, there is a kind of a movement building to that.
What do you think, Bill? Is it something people are actively thinking about as part of community building or team building?
Well, I think particularly where and just maybe just because I haven't yet been exposed to the adult organizations that are focusing on this, but on the youth side, I would answer very much yes. And my kids happen to go to. We live in Fairfax County, which is considered one of the best school systems in the country. And one of the things that they just instituted, I think, what effect about 2 years ago, is a more formal requirement for service learning projects. And basically, it starts at the 6th grade level, where they have to do something that's really pretty minimal, something like 3 hours of service over the by the time they finish the 6th grade. But it goes successfully higher, and I think it's something like 50 hours is required for high school seniors, and so it's a requirement with teeth, because if you don't have it, you don't get your high school diploma. So there's the service learning aspect of developing empathy. Not in Virginia. There's a website that some of you guys may be familiar with called Learning to Give, which is based out in I honestly can't remember if it's Minnesota or Michigan, but it's one of those two. And they have a whole curriculum, whole things for pretty much all grade levels, starting at about 1st grade level, in terms of the idea of developing a habit of charitable giving. And and I absolutely do think that that's important to start with as young. And to be honest, a 4-year-old can understand, hey, we're going to take some cans of food to the food drive. I mean, it doesn't, it's not just the upper elementary, middle, and high school level. It's like I absolutely believe that people see what they what are modeled by parents and other role models that children have.
What about you, Bert? I really agree with starting young and trying to build this, build a generation of future leaders. What about the people who are already adults that are going to be around for another 30, 40, 50, 60 years?
Yeah, I think you can. I'm involved in Time Bank here, and the only one in Sweden. I'm in the board, and there are other structures that you can build. We have one very popular service at the moment, and that's the youth learn the older generation to use mobile phone, for example. So I think there are quite many ways to connect multi-generational projects. So, but you need to think in another way. You need to look for network development, network strategies. It will be easier to develop these social capital in that way than to go through the standard institution. Now the environmental agency should go out and say how you take care about the garbage or so. If you start with the people and maybe the young leaders, and they could be good examples and tell the other people and they will spread, that is much more effective if you start to concentrate on the people who want to do something. And they could be the role models for developing this further into society. So I think we can, strategies are changing. I know one region in already now in Europe that is in fact at the regional level is working with network development as main strategy, and it has functioned really good. So that is the way to go forward, I think, to use another type of methods in nurturing a giving, a sharing environment, and that if you nurture that, you will automatically, or not automatically, but you will grow this competence of being empathic in some way over time. You do lots of activities that will build up trust, that you will do something for some other people and they will give back. The problem now is that when you start to give, maybe someone keep it, and they don't. We haven't built up this normal reciprocity. And that can be quite hard if you give all the time, year after year, and you see the people go the back door and they take it just and leave. So that is a challenge of building these platforms or these neighborhoods and so. So you need also in this period to find other supporters who are like you, that they can support each other on the way to have a more empathic neighborhood or society in general, I think.
Well,
go ahead, Edward.
Oh, I was just hearing from Bert. It sounds like what you're saying is to have people network kind of at a community level, and that you're also seeing that the institutions are like a bit of a block to empathy, and that also if people, even if they get to, first get together with people who are kind of valuing empathy, kind of start networking, and then another block to the empathy is that some people will just take and not pass the empathy on and try, and so those that's kind of like the dynamics.
Absolutely, absolutely agree, and so that's a challenge in this period. There's two types of logics out there. It's the old industrial society built on people wearing machines, and now we are building maybe the knowledge economy where it's very intangible assets. You don't see it. It's a completely different way, or I don't know how I can express it. I think you understand.
Yeah.
Well, so it's a challenge there.
I was hearing from Bill too that the way to kind of build the empathy is to model it. Is that right? So that the parents are kind of like modeling the actions for the children, and then they'll just kind of pick it up through the modeling.
I would say small. Just there are the school, for example. I'm much into asking questions than to provide answers. So I think if school and the teachers and so forth could be seen more as a facilitator, to be a provider of asking questions, I think we would get much more dynamics in groups to learn to be not like on the other side, just providing the solutions or the answers, but really learn to ask the questions and do it themselves. That will give trust in your own capacity, and that is also, I think, the way to trust other people and to build this empathy.
In my email today, I'm subscribed to the Deloitte consulting firm, and they on their blog talked about the value of informal networks, and they were talking about social network analysis. as tools companies were beginning to use to understand the networks that are becoming available to their employees. And Bill, in workplace fundraising, that's a network building type of a process, but I'm not sure that companies who are part of the United Way or the CFC are using network analysis tools or that type of thinking to create a cross value of my employees engaged in this collective activity are employees who are expanding their informal networks, and therefore they become more valuable employees to me as a result. Do you see an opportunity for that type of connection?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I work with my clients, because I do consulting to nonprofits about how to maximize the results with the CFC, and it's always a combination of grassroots as well as top down. And because the single biggest mistake most or many CFC charities make is they enroll in it, which they think is the hard part. That's actually the easy part, and then they run a stealth campaign, and then they're wondering, well, gee, why were our results better? But the book that I always recommend as first on the fundraising book isn't anything to do with fundraising. It's Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point, and because in The Tipping Point, it's a better succinct description of how communication actually occurs than anything else I've read. And in his analysis, there's 3 types of supporter. There's mavens, connectors, and one that he calls salespeople. And in workplace giving, what I'll have the nonprofit do is, and because nobody knows this before you ask the question, this kind of goes to the point about if you want better answers, ask better questions. And I'll ask this of a nonprofit that's already in the CFC, of your existing supporters, how many of them have a federal connection? And I didn't ask how many are a federal employee, because it's using the word of mouth. It may be of their current supporters, someone may be the parent of a federal employee, maybe the child of a federal employee. So and one of the things that's unique about the CFC is that it's like a fishing hole, because the only way you can solicit a federal employee for charitable giving is through the combined federal campaign. It's against the law to do it any other way. So it's just, this goes back to that duck-billed platypus comment, because it's a mandatory, completely voluntary program. Mandatory because it's run in every single federal agency that has the United States flag flying over it everywhere in the world. And it's voluntary because the participation and who runs it, there's 40,000 volunteers soliciting funds each fall. But by asking that, and whether or not it's certainly not as formal as a network analysis with some of the software tools, but it is that grassroots approach of your current supporters, who has a federal connection, and then you develop the stories and the messages that you want to get out to, the summation, the one-sentence summary of all, pretty much all fundraising books, all fundraising theory is, you can say it in one sentence. Tell your story, make your ask, but you have to have a story that resonates with people, and they resonate, and then the reason stories resonate is it may be someone who, for plenty of the disease nonprofits, it's someone in their family was affected by a disease or a condition. Maybe their aunt had MS, or we actually have a family friend who was literally, when she was 4, the poster child for the Cerebral Palsy Association. She's now 55 and in a nursing home in Texas. But because of that, and there's no way you would know of our connection to Patty, happens to be her name, through a shared network analysis. That's where, and since I was an IT guy on the and very familiar with knowledge management, one of the problems you get with the shared network analysis is that to really do it, you have to delve so deeply that you'll never figure out these connections where there's not some other kind of link. It's like you can make the link between, okay, in a given workplace, there's people that play tennis, and so that's how the informal network developed. It's the tennis players. But the fact that somebody shares an interest in growing lilies and they met at a garden club, it's the kind of thing you'll never find out. But you don't need to know the analysis part of it. It's like you need to have the action. And on the workplace giving side, it's letting people know what your, for example, matter of fact, I'm going to just hang this, show this up here. Okay, this is the CFC logo. It's $1 million benefit available to every CFC charity, because they can use this logo anywhere that they want. I'm going to flip this down, and this is a fake number, but every CFC charity has a 5-digit code. If every charity in the CFC would put this logo and its number on their homepage, that would answer 90% of the questions they're ever going to get. And that's just one way of just kind of generating awareness and communicate. Because here's the other thing that's both true about the internet and with modern communication. You never know who's going to be visiting your website. Unlike the kind of the old model of, hey, let's come up with a press release list of, here's the New York Times, here's the, the Economist, whatever group you think's interested in your stuff. At this point, with keyword searching, people that want to know about your topic area will find you. But you got to put the information out there, and you have to then have a story that's compelling. Presumably you do, or you wouldn't be in the business you're in.
Well, we're close to the final few minutes of the commitment of time we gave, and following up on what you just said. Let me invite each of you, if you had one destination you would want somebody to find as a result of listening to this video, what would it be? Edward, what is your website?
It's cultureofempathy.com, and it's the largest website on the internet for information about empathy.
And Bert?
Then I would suggest that they check me up at the Facebook page, Bert-Ola Bergstrand, and you will find me. That's where we grow some action at the moment.
And Bill, what would you be?
Yeah, thank you for the question. CFCfundraising.com is my website where I have the keys to success, and there's a way to request a special free CFC report. So it's CFCfundraising.com.
And I would say that tell people to look on Google or Bing for the words tutor, mentor, and my websites will be 4 or 5 on the first page. I did that search on Google yesterday, and I was the first listing out of 7.2 million that were there. Now, unfortunately, when you go to my page, there's a lot of information there that still needs to be facilitated by empathetic people trying to help other people understand it. But that's why we're all here together, that we are part of a network. We've each gotten to know each other for a short period of time or a longer period of time. And as we talk to each other, whether it be through Skype or through Facebook or the telephone or meeting face-to-face, we're each building a empathy of understanding and interest in what the other person is doing. And Edward, I want to thank you for making this possible. Do you want to give a little bit of what will happen next in terms of the panel discussion?
Okay, thanks, Dan. Thanks for moderating this panel. I'll just be putting this online, so within 3 or 4 days it should be online and anyone can view it. And there'll be links from this video on YouTube to kind of more information, and people can follow up. And we can think about holding other panels as well in the future and kind of keep building this network.
And Edwin has not only offered the invitation that people can organize their own panels, so either Bert, Bill, or other people you know could contact Edwin and say, I want to organize a panel, or he interviews people individually as well, and he's always looking for new people and to expand the range of people connecting where he is. So I encourage that. So I think that would conclude us for today. I really wanted to say thank you. Do either of you have a final call to empathy that you would like to leave with?
Yeah, I would like in the World Forum we are hosting in the coming months. It's already running now. It would be really great there to take up and have at least one activity when we could focus on this topic and bring as many people as possible into the conversation. So the forum will end this year in early December, so there are plenty of time, but it would be great to have an opportunity to dig deeper into this topic and see how it could be part of building social capital. So thank you very much.
Bill?
Don't have specific action, but thank you very much for inviting me to be part of the panel. I appreciate it. And Bert, it's nice to meet you. As Dan mentioned, we did a test earlier this week with Edwin, and so I'm glad to get to know all of you better. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys too. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
My best from sunny Sweden.
Sunny California. Bye.
And Chicago.
See the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.